Cathaoirleach, and I'm very glad of the opportunity, even if it's only 10 minutes, to deal with the issue of local government. We're well into this crisis. We haven't actually had any debate about local government up to this point. And in truth, as others have already referenced, I think that the local authorities have been very much a frontline service. In my own county of Wexford and across the country, they have been the first port of call for many people. They've been the anchor bringing together community organisations, the GAA, everybody else, who all wanted to help. And they rallied through the local authority and the local councillor, who was on the ground and listening and feeding in centrally. And I have to say local radio too has been an extraordinary resource in that regard. But and local papers. But the notion that we need now to sustain that, because they have been absolutely critical and remain critical in dealing with the community response to this unprecedented crisis that the nation is facing. But they also will be equally important in the next phase, the reopening phase, the rebooting of our economy phase, and they need to be prepared for that. So in the few minutes that I have, I really want to just focus on the funding difficulties that they're now facing, and to hear clearly the department's thinking in relation to meeting the shortfall in funding that many deputies have referenced, and as the Minister has talked around. But I want to give the Minister time to answer specifically what the issues are. The total estimate for local government income this year, if you add up all the estimates of published by every local authority, is €5.7 billion. That's what they expect to get in normal times, 5.7 billion. Of that, 1.66 billion, as the Minister has said, or 33%, was coming from commercial rates, and 1.3 billion, 26%, from goods and services that local government would supply and be paid for. Now, I just want to look at those two areas in particular and hear how that is going to be met. Firstly, in relation to the commercial rates, the 1.66 billion, which is roughly €133 million a month. That's what they expected to get in, €133 million a month. Minister, you announced a waiver, or the Senior Minister in your department announced a waiver for 3 months and allocated €260 million to meet the cost of that waiver. The expected income, if all the rates were paid, is €400 million. And you're saying that that's over for the 3 months, and you're going to pay €260 million, or 65% of the expected sum. Now, how has that been calculated? Now, obviously, not every business is going to be affected. There will be some who will be able to pay full rates, and that's fine. But this is not a precise, an absolutely accurate calculation. You don't know, and you've instanced yourself, for example, some pharmacies might do very little and might be not in a position to pay. Some might be doing normal work or even more. So the first question I have, in terms of, clearly you have an expectation that 35% of the estimated rates income will be paid. If it isn't, how much of that will you meet? That's my first question.
Okay. No, the answer as briefly as possible. The figures were calculated in a line-by-line analysis by the CCMA in figures that were presented to the local government section in the department. And that line-by-line analysis is where we arrived at the figure of 200. Yeah, it is a guesstimate.
If it isn't right, will you pony up the balance? That's my question.
It's difficult for me in advance of or not being the one sitting at the cabinet table, but it's absolutely my intention. I mean, the 100% of what was sought by the CCMA, that is included in the 260 million figure. Very much my intention that if the guesstimate underestimates the amount of money that we expect businesses that have stayed open to be contributing in commercial rates, that we would meet the full balance of it. That's the intention of. Is that a commitment now? Yes, that is a commitment. I'll let him ask your next question. Sorry.
Yeah, so my first, so I want to be clear. So the full amount of estimated rates, commercial rates, will be met, and any shortfall will be calculated at the end and rebated expeditiously to local authorities.
That's very much the intention of
Well,
government.
that's very helpful. The second question is in relation to the goods and services income, the 1.3 billion I'm talking about. Now that's again 108 million euros per month, or 325 million for 3 months, and obviously this crisis is going to go beyond 3 months. Now some services will not be impacted again, but others will be very significantly impacted. You've instanced yourself, for example, car parking. And these are incomes that will never be recouped. You're not going to come back and pay for all the car parking lost. Well, that's the point. That's not going to happen. And in fact, I think that will be a permanent reduction. And there are others, depending on there'll be planning fees that will be lost. Depending on the local authority, in my own, for example, there'll be harbour dues that will be lost. There'll be significant portions of that 108 million per month will be lost. Now, you've indicated so far in your answer to other deputies that the Cabinet is going to consider this on Friday. I want to know what they're considering. Is it your intention, again, and I hope you'll give me the same clarity in this answer as you gave me in the last, to meet the entire loss, or what portion of the loss, of that 1.3 billion, an annual figure, of say 108 million per month for the duration of this crisis, do you propose to meet? Because I'm very conscious of time. What I'm being told by finance officers across the country is they estimate that at a minimum, their most optimistic forecast is there'll be 10 million across the country down of that 108 per month. And they estimate that the total amount that will be lost of their overall 5.7 billion is of the order of 100 million per month. Is that the sort of support you're going to announce and pony up to local authorities on Friday?
Is that your final question?
No, I want to. If I can get another one in, I will. If the minister could just say yes, then I can answer no.
Friday's decision is in relation to
rates only.
Rates only. The analysis you referred to, Deputy, in your question. Discussions with finance officers. There is another round of analysis going on with the CCMA and the department officials in relation to not just establishing the 108 million euro figure that you mentioned, but the best guesstimate as to how much of that might be a shortfall as a result of the COVID crisis. So I'm not really in a position to sign a second blank cheque in a few minutes, but again, just to say that if you look at the figure the figure per month in relation to rates is 85 million of a projected shortfall. You've mentioned that finance officers expect it to be a figure of 10 million euros. It might well be a matter. It might well be a matter for whoever occupies my chair next. But once we have the analysis on what the guesstimate of the loss is, then I'll be in a better position to give an answer.
Can I just ask then, maybe for clarity on that point, in terms of the principle of it, you're saying you're going to meet in full the rates shortfall, and if it's rolled over, presumably a recurring monthly amount for rates. Is there at least a commitment to give a proportion of the goods and services loss as well? From the Exchequer, and we're not rebalancing allocations across the country?
There will be a need for extra funding from the Exchequer to meet the goods and services loss, and that's what's being worked. Those are the.
And you've no idea of what percentage of that 108 million, or say there's a 10 million per month loss. Is there any indication of what percentage of that might be met?
Not yet. That'll be another government decision.
Thanks, Minister.